So I'm gonna preface this video by talking about some stuff. If you don't really care, then skip to this part of the video. First of all, no, I'm not back. In fact, pretty soon I'm gonna be hauled off to what I like to call a mandatory prison sentence. So I couldn't be back doing YouTube videos even if I wanted to. But I was looking around my stuff and I noticed this script I had written 4 years ago, in a folder aptly titled Attempts at Reviews, which in turn was in a folder also aptly titled Weird Old Stuff. I went over it, and I'm definitely glad I didn't actually make the video at the time, since this script is really cynical, and I wasn't a fan. With that being said, since we just recently got another one of these crossover movies, I figured I might as well rewrite the script and cobble together this video as a bit of a celebration. I'm still using the CinemaSins format because it's good for going over the movie in chronological order, but I tried to tone down the snark a bit and actually talk about what I think went wrong with this movie, even if it's been scientifically proven that I'm bad at critiquing things. I'll also be taking a page from Cinema Wins and kind of have a closing thoughts bit at the end. So, without further ado, enjoy the video. So strangely enough, we start out in Seoul, South Korea. Interesting. Let me start off by saying I don't think this is a very good Korean market set. It's pretty obvious that this is one of Toei's recording grounds that show up a couple times in every Rider and Sentai show, with the majority of the decorations just being flyers and banners with Korean text. And although most of these are passable, there's also a number of egregious ones that no Korean would actually put on the banner, like this one that proudly proclaims that the tteokbokki is cheap, and this other one which straight up just says kimchi. However, the booths themselves are pretty convincing, and I'd say they were doing their best with what they had, and it's generally excusable. What isn't excusable, however, is the incredibly stilted Korean voice acting of these two. The tone is off, there's a number of Japanese pronunciations that slip in, and for heck's sake, I couldn't even understand what this guy was saying at the end here. Which is weird, because just a few moments ago, we had some pretty decent Korean from the salesman. Was there really no one at Toei who spoke better Korean than this? Yeah, obviously, speaking a different language is hard, and it's not going to sound very natural when you first try it. But given that Toei was willing to set up this whole Seoul set piece, I'm not sure why they didn't go the extra mile and just work with Day One Media and polish things up a bit by working with actual Korean people. Especially since this movie coincided with Dino Force Brave. Unless it's contractual obligations, but still. But I'm gonna take that sin right back, because while writing the script, I just noticed that they probably accidentally included both the Wuri Bank and LG logos in this shot, and I just think that's funny. So we get to the Q Rangers getting ready to save the day, and I always felt like something was off with the way the voices were recorded here. Like, is it just me? It seems like the audio quality in this scene is way worse than that of the actual show. And then there's the lines themselves. They seem incredibly forced, like they were trying to get all 10 members of the team to have at least one line, though I suppose this is more of a fundamental issue of the Q Rangers themselves. I have to say though, this is a pretty exciting opening to the movie. You've got the Voyagers gunning down the enemy ships, followed by Kurino confronting the mothership and doing this big old sword attack. It's good stuff. Now, we don't actually get to see the outcome of this fight or why the Q Rangers ended up retreating, but I'll save that complaint for later. Afterwards, we transition to Amu from Zeroger being treated by the CR of Kamen Rider X8, and this is where I'd say things really start getting confusing. So first off, we have this X-ray scan. It's showing that she's got these cat ears on the tail to tip off to Emu and Asuna/Poppy that she's not their everyday patient. But doesn't the champion symbol give her an actual human form? They're not just invisible, those ears straight up shouldn't even be there. Because if that's not the case, then how the heck do you explain Tusk? Then we have Hiro being uncharacteristically cold towards his patient. Sure, this might have been in character for early X8 Hiro, but this movie takes place after episode 23. 4 episodes earlier, we had Hiro taking Emu's place as the one talking to the patient, hearing out her problems and raising her spirits. So why is he back to being uncaring to the well-being of his patient again? And then there's the strangest part of this segment. Amu states that Xevious destroyed Zealand, which doesn't work on 2 levels. Firstly, by the end of Zeroger, Zealand and Earth were combined into one world. So Xevious wouldn't be able to destroy Zealand without also destroying the entire planet. Secondly, even if we assume that the 2 dimensions are somehow split again, the cube that connects the 2 is located in Japan. So how would Xevious be able to destroy it by attacking a city in a completely different country? Frankly, I'm of the opinion that they should have had that Dimension Merge ending for Zyuohger because it makes any future crossover involving Zyuohger really complicated to work with. Why has Kirino suddenly landed back in Japan when a few minutes ago it was in a high-stakes battle against the Xevious mothership? Did the Kyurangers just abandon the mission, leaving all the innocents at the mercy of the alien invaders? And why is everyone panicking about Kirino? When the Xevious mothership, a giant polygon thing that's much bigger and quite frankly scarier than Spaceballs Man over here showed up, people just kind of stood around looking at it until it started firing. Unless people in Japan are a lot more scared of anything new showing up, and I guess I can't blame them considering the million Pac-Man mosquitoes running loose a few months prior. How does a 46-meter tall giant robot lose to a tug-of-war against two untransformed doctors? Man, the Kyurangers are just really unlikable in this scene. They're acting less like the galaxy's heroes and more like stereotypical bad guys, not even bothering to explain why they suspect Poppy and almost immediately resorting to brute force. Yeah, it'd be cool to have a battle between the XA team and the Kyurangers, but there has to have been a better way. How does Lucky even know what Kamen Riders are? I know that the Gamer Driver just announced the name Kamen Rider, but that shouldn't mean anything to the Kyurangers. This fight is alright, but it's definitely a step down from the opening, even beyond the fact that that was using a ton of CG. The only ones that show off their abilities are Garu and Hami. We don't even get Lucky doing some crazy RNG stunner. Also, why is Taiga fighting up close against a bulky bull robot? Isn't his whole fighting style something along the lines of I have a gun and you don't, therefore I'll just keep shooting you and then I win? Yeah, but can't all the Bugsters do that? I mean, they could definitely be sucked into virtual space pretty easily. Why are these guys going after the one Bugster that's good and not the Sonic and Knuckles crazy guy in puzzle pajamas who actually killed a man? Aren't you married? XA just kind of stands around until his fist comes back. I guess that that's his main weapon, but isn't he capable of fighting on his own without it? Also, Fist doesn't come back. And here we have Kiria, present for all of one scene. This was several months after he died in the main series, and when this was released, we were still months away from his revival in that main series. So when this was advertised, it was a big deal, and then it turned out that he didn't actually contribute anything to the movie. I guess it's fine if you take it as the actor's primary reason for coming back being for Go Rider, and Toei figured, well, since you're here, you want to do a quick bit for the actual movie? And he said, sure, why not, and they went from there. But still, what a letdown, man. Suddenly, Fuma. Wait, did I use that joke 4 years ago? That's racist. Rightist? Not a sin, but you might want to look into the track record of the Kamen Riders from Ruki onwards, Lucky. This scene bothered me when I first watched it. What happened to Korea? Presumably, Xevious has no other goal than to just wreak havoc, so the fact that it's moving to Japan implies that it pretty much just nuked Korea off of the face of the planet. Which ain't a very pretty picture to me. I really don't like these sprites. They just aren't visually appealing at all. But more importantly, when was it established that Poppy could take non-Bugsters into the game realm? Now this is a much better fight scene. We've got Stronger using his dab charge move thing to fire off these big shockwaves, Amu using her claws to overpower her opponents, Amazon being all feral and biting into Amu, and of course Uchi showing off some impressive swordplay while untransformed. I'd very much like characters in fight scenes to show off their special abilities to kind of differentiate them from just sword user, gun user, bare hands fighter and the like, which is unfortunately going to be a bit of a problem with the rest of this movie. So, this part is confusing. With Uchi using the word brave, one of the signature keywords of Kyoryuger, then Amu repeating that in confusion, followed by Poppy saying that they're looking for Kamen Rider Brave, it feels like the two just assumed that Uchi knew where to find Brave just because he said the word in a completely unrelated context. I really don't think the word Brave thing needed to be shoehorned in at all, just have Poppy ask Uchi that she and Amu were looking for Brave and go from there. At this point, you might hear a 6 to 10 note leitmotif slowly playing in the background.
なるほど。確かに我らゲームのヒーローと現実のヒーローが力を合わせれば、ゼビウスの敵も倒せる。さすがは。Get ready to hear that multiple times throughout the whole movie. It is grating. XA being the red member never really felt right to me. He's using Gekito to robots, which I guess technically works, but he's much more pink compared to the team's actual pink being Momotaro's, who's all red. But I'll let it slide since the main character being red is kind of a staple. Speaking of Momotaros, we have this little chunk of banter between Momotaros and Urotaros, and I'm a little miffed about how often these guys show up in crossovers and whatnot. With the addition of the latest one, all 4 of the Imagines appear in half of the Taisen movies, even if Ryutaros didn't have any lines in this one, and Momotaros appears in 4 of the 6. I'm in that weird position where I'm not enough of a casual viewer to just laugh at the funny gremlins cracking jokes on screen, whilst also not being enough of a hardcore Toku fan to have seen all the Kamen Riders, including Den-O, so I'm getting a bit tired of seeing them. I get that Den-O is an important series in Kamen Rider due to its quality and sales, and the Imagines are fan-favorite characters who are a ton of fun, but having them show up so often makes their appearances have less impact. It's not, hey, these guys are back, it's, oh, there they are again, woo. That being said, this show caught me off guard and I had a good laugh. I like this scene since we got to see the other 3 members show up and kind of just be themselves, at least for Yaku and Jin. I'm not familiar with Kitaoka. But it definitely needed to be a bit longer to have some more interactions, especially because this is just about the only time we get to see their personalities. I like this. However, I don't like this fight. Remember how I said the earlier fight was cool since we had the combatants show off their powers? That doesn't happen here. Yakumo doesn't use his shurikens or magic, Kitaoka doesn't use his cards, nothing. Even the Die Rangers don't seem to be anything more than just sorta skilled sword users and staff users in this fight. I thought they needed a full team of red, blue, yellow, green, pink. There's that line motif again.
パーフェクトな外科医を目指すあなたにとって彼は触れられたくない過去
彼を数に入れたらパーフェクトじゃなくなるもんね
But if he wanted to be a perfect surgeon, why didn't he just give him the surgery? If the kid didn't care either way, he should have been fine with getting the surgery, wouldn't he? They skipped the whole tournament. They skipped the entire hecking tournament. What was the point of saying, hey, look at all these cool teams that are in this movie, if we're not even gonna show a second of them? Obviously, you can't fit an entire tournament arc in this movie, but a minute-long montage or something would have been nice. Also, anyone else notice how strange the choices are for each team's colors? Like, let's take Team Jiro over here as an example, since I'd say it's the biggest offender. The team members are comprised of characters whose suit actor was Okamoto Jiro, which is cute, but look at the selections here. Kamen Rider Black is red and Iksa is blue, which is passable since they both have hints of those colors. But Shinken Gold is green? Gosei Knight is pink? Blue Racer as yellow? Why don't move Shinken Gold to yellow and Blue Racer to blue? Then bring in Liangold to take the green position. And then you can pick Ojo for pink since his purple is a lot closer to pink than Gosei Knight's black and silver. Adding to that, isn't that dark Gosei Knight? How is Genmu in a zombie form in a game that was created before the events of X8 even took place? Same goes for Kiria. The kid who made the game shouldn't have known that he transforms into laser. At least the tournament finals are a better spectacle. We still don't have very many special techniques. All we really get are Yellow Owl being able to fly and Spectre changing his weapon to gun mode, but the battlefield is a lot more interesting and allows the characters to make use of their surroundings by moving to a more advantageous position, setting up obstacles for their opponents, and the like. I also like the fight between Momotaros and Momo Ranger. You've got Momotaros being really aggressive and Momo Ranger in turn faking being scared and taking a more defensive stance. If the characters' powers won't show up, then their personalities shining through is just as good. With that being said, X8 at level 3 beating Genmu at level 10 is a bit of a stretch. Unless Genmu's zombie form's literal only saving grace with his immortality and he's literally nothing without it. I'm not against the idea of the Go Riders. I think it's a fun concept. However, this fight scene doesn't do it for me. The machines they call are way slower than the Voyagers in the first battle, and then the Go Riders just abandon them for the Go Rangers' signature attack. Maybe it would have been better if the fight had a faster pace and they used the attack while still on the machines for some cool aerial shots. Also, pretty sure Kirino chopped that core thing in half at the start of the movie. What makes this time any different? I mean, it made sense to need Ghost Power in Pac-Man because that's the in-game weakness, but although I've never played Xevious, something tells me you don't destroy the mothership with a multicolored football. Oh boy, shocker again. Aren't they in literally every single Taisen movie? Is that a Gaim reference? I think that's a Gaim reference. Still haven't watched Gaim. Even if there's a massive evil army invading, I'm not sure I buy Snipe and Paradox working together on this one, considering the latter is the main enemy at large after Genmu's death and has access to the, at the time, mysterious Kamen Rider Chronicle. I think it would have been better to have Paradox show up somewhere else and decide to join the fight on his own, especially since these two are fighting separately anyway. There's that line motif again. I would have preferred if Balance was here to help him out with this. The Q Rangers are severely lacking in screen time in this movie, and that would have alleviated it a little bit. Something tells me it didn't go as planned. Fighting a mirrored version of yourself and or the phantoms of your past is a classic, but it feels like it lacks a bit of oomph in this movie. Probably due to Hiro's general lack of emotion without any indicator that he truly regrets not saving the kid back. Has he just been standing there, vaporizing whatever he feels like? More importantly, this doesn't seem like a very good army if these two are enough to seemingly halt all progress of the invasion. So they swapped Uchi's changer with the Dynaforce Brave variant, which I'm assuming is to coincide with that show. I don't get that. Checking the release dates, this movie was released a whole 2 to 3 weeks before that show was dubbed in Japanese, and not everyone watching this movie would know that that show was even a thing, so it feels like it would leave people confused more than anything. Personally, I would have preferred it if they just stuck with the original for the authentic Uchi experience. What would the game have done if you just pulled out Maximum and went Ganondorf on these guys? And again, that leitmotif. It feels like it plays in literally any scene that isn't an action scene. Where have you been for the past hour? Also, not sure why they went with their theme from the Nin Nin vs. Tokyo movie here. Most of their earlier Bird cameo themes seem to be songs that the composers just have to come up with based on the theme of the new Sentai/writer, and only later on do they get a more focused musical style. Although I like this song, I think an actual Zero track would have fit much better. I'm excusing the Amazons team not doing much more than just punches and kicks, because if they used their actual fighting style, then no child would be allowed to watch it, but this might be the worst fight in the whole film. I like the idea of Ex-Aid running away from 3 feral baddies until he can find something that'll give him an upper hand, but the fact that the chase sequence is entirely restricted to a flight of stairs, plus the fact that the one running away is in this silly chibi suit, means that the fight feels really slow, cramped, and uninteresting. Not saying this either because it might be a thing, but is this kind of tactic an actual thing? The reason I said that last fight was the worst one in the film is because this one can't even be called a fight at all. 3 Dark Riders showing up is really cool, but we get 2 shots of them and that's it! Could they really not come up with any other melody for serious music? I actually like this dynamic between Naga and this kid. They were both born emotionless, but while Naga actively sought to learn more about the tiny hints of emotion that he felt, the kid merely brushed them off as nothing but a small distraction. In his quest to unlock his emotions, Naga met the Q Rangers and they've been willing to help him find them, and now he's willing to do the same for this kid. I really wish this was explored far more. I know, Rider kicks are a staple of the Kamen Rider series, but these are 2 knights fighting in the mirror world. Please just end it off with a sword clash instead. But the fact that he's in here, plus the fact that the Shocker characters are running loose in the real world, would imply that this connection was made either when Chou Superhero Taisen was completed, or while the kid was still in this dimension. So wouldn't there still be some way to recreate it afterwards? Sorry, but no amount of dramatic orchestra is going to make that leitmotif not annoying. Wait, if that connection being severed caused all the real world people to come back, then why aren't the game world characters also being sent back to where they came from? Rip Uchi, man. Must have spent at least 10 minutes getting thrashed around by this generic baddie. Where have you been this entire alien invasion? You just hacked the database and dipped! Alright, they've obviously been saving some of their best tricks for this final battle, and I will say I like a lot of the camera angles and whatnot. But that doesn't mean there aren't any problems. So, this was a pretty egregious error on their part. We've got Amu climbing up this cliffside about to pounce on Raimane, who has Yamato pinned down. But as soon as she's about to get him, he suddenly turns into the Paradox Roimune. How did no one catch this? Oh cool, these guys are back, and they're gone. What was the point of bringing them into the final battle if you're just gonna dispose of them in less than a minute? At least let them get a few hits in or something. This is just depressing. Which means a galaxy conquered by the dark matter, which in turn is the one the Q Rangers are trying to liberate, is in a different dimension. Then what the heck are the Q Rangers doing over here? The final boss of this movie is just a larger, recolored version of a generic Q Ranger bad guy mech. There has to have been a better idea for a final boss than that, right? There you guys are! Why are the rest of the Q Rangers barely even in this movie? They take up a third of the main poster! That particular power has always been one of the Q Rangers' strongest trap cards, and they barely use it. A few episodes after this movie, we learned that it can be used multiple times to make twins of twins. And here, we're finding it works on giant robots. So why don't they just make an army of Kiranos and annihilate the Dark Matter Empire already? Well, you see, there's this thing that we like to call the Gatsukira. This fits way too well. X8 gets to jump around, dodging attacks and landing a good hit on the evil gear robot, whilst the Kirano twins have to resort to nibbling at its ankles. Oh boy, I certainly hope we weren't anticipating these guys like I was. Unlike the Go Rider team, they actually get to take out some baddies, but they also barely get any screen time, let alone get to use their unique attacks. Where's Akaninja's Fire Shuriken Barrage, Go Buster Red's Speed Boost, Decade's Summoning Skill, Drive's Tire Mixing, Ghost's Teleportation? This was also something that was advertised in trailers and stuff, only for them to not really get to do much of anything. Also, I love Ghost to bits, but can we talk about how much Mugen sticks out here? Decade has some magenta accents to make him fit in, with a silver suit emphasizing said accents even more. But Mugen is sparkly white and orange, so it doesn't seem like he belongs with a squad of ultra-powered red superheroes. Seeing as how they give Agito burning instead of shining, I think they probably should have gone with Tokon Boost instead. Although I guess we did eventually get Tokon Boost in a crossover movie in some sense. One last bit with the Ultra team here. If they were strong enough to wipe out all the baddies at once, why didn't Brave just start by summoning them instead of wasting his time with the Go Rider squad? I like this attack and it's cool to see it here, but why do the Zooargers get to pull off a team attack and not the Q-Rangers? And here we have the most pointless part of this movie. Even if we count Brave pulling out the gadget as part of its screen time, this Galaxian form lasts less than 30 seconds. They gives this form an entirely unique mold and yet couldn't give anything past recolors to Laser Turbo? This sequence is awesome. You've got the Kirano twins giving X8 a boost, followed by this baseball meteor kick attack. Great stuff.
ヘイト君戻ってくるんだ。今の君は現実もゲームもつまんないんだろ。でも現実には僕がいる。ゲームなら誰にも負けない。僕と勝負しようよ。
面白そうだね。
Is that really what they're going with? Yo, come over here and I'll wreck you in Club Penguin, mate. Sure, that sounds fun. Especially since a kid being bored of games was not something that was ever established.
僕はエイト君の口から聞きたい。
エイト君とつながりたいと思っている2人が今必死に戦ってる。それでも何も感じない。
One last use of that leitmotif. Oh, don't act like you've contributed to this story at all, man.
ゲームと現実のつながりを切除する際、エイトが戻れる分を残しておいたんだ。
You know, you could have just said that instead of punching your coworker. Never mind, this is the last use of that leitmotif. I'm a bit picky when it comes to movies. They're pretty long and require your full attention, so you can't multitask while watching in the same way you would when watching someone talk about stupid Nintendo games. But that does mean that I've enjoyed most of the movies I've watched. This, unfortunately, was the first time I'd say I didn't really enjoy a movie. Though I should probably note that this is the first Taisen movie I watched where I knew both main hero teams that showed up. I watched the first two when I had only watched a few Sentai shows and didn't fully go through the other two. The fact that I was actually paying attention to this one probably didn't help its case. I think the movie had a lot of good ideas. Space invasion from Xevious and Galaxian? Cool. Twin Kiranos? I like that. Mixing the first Sentai with the first Rider? Silly enough to work. But it felt like they were trying to cram too many of these ideas into 90 minutes, and as such, everything felt really shallow because anything cool that happened was over in an instant. And that includes a story. An emotionless child finding no purpose in the world and thus planning to destroy it is a great concept, as is a hero who also shares that same emotionlessness, sympathizing with him and trying to get him to change his mind. But it's all surrounded by a whole bunch of noise, and it's hard to understand why the characters do what they do, especially Hero. Personally, he's my least favorite of the X8 team, but I think having him explore an old failure of his would be great for adding depth to his character. However, you never really got to understand his motives, or why he changed his mind about saving the kid, or really anything. In fact, the main series does a significantly better job showing his character development from a cold-hearted medical professional to a more compassionate ally. The main bad guy, which is a spider dude if you forgot, and it wouldn't blame you, is also just about as basic as you can get, with its only gimmick being that he sometimes speaks English. I mean, the dude even had the forgettable name. Shocker Great Leader 3. Sure, I'll remember that. Plus, his monster form is apparently a retool of some other villain soon, and his giant mech is just a big version of the generic Kyo Ranger baddie bots. It seems we've fallen pretty far since that CG monstrosity that was a big machine, huh? But the worst part is how the movie handles its large cast of heroes. In crossover movies like these, you'd ideally like to have a good balance between the current Rider series, the current Sentai series, and the returning cast, but that balance is way off kilter here. I'd say all of the X8 cast, sans Laser and Genmu, had adequate amounts of screen time, though Genmu was mainly supposed to be a mid-boss anyways, but most of the Key Rangers are barely even in this film. They have a mecha fight at the start and end, plus one fight with the X8 trio, and then all of them except Naga and Balance are gone. Heck, Spada and Raptor didn't even get to have a regular battle in this movie. Even worse is the returning cast. Uchi was cool, but the Go Rider squad really got the short end of the stick. In battle, all they amounted to was 3 sword users and a gun user, and they had zero impact in the final fight. I really feel bad for Kitaoka fans. At the time this movie was released, Yakuma and Jin's shows are still relatively new, and Momotaro shows up everywhere, so who cares if he had a less than satisfactory appearance. But even if I'm not that knowledgeable about when it comes to Toku stuff, I know that Kitaoka returning as Zelda was a big deal for several Ryuki fans. And to see him barely get to do much of anything must have been a huge bummer. Even more so since he didn't come back for the Zero Ryuki special thing. We also have everyone who only showed up as a suit, which is fine and all, but at least let them do something. 55 of the 80 combatants shown in the tournament were just PNG images, excluding Decade who showed up later. Then the superpower teams barely got to show off their abilities, and the same can be said for all the final boss bad guys that showed up. Meanwhile, the Zero Warriors, despite being last year's team at the time, get a buttload of screen time and even get to do their own unique team attack. What gives? With all that being said, I can't hate this movie too much. I think Toei is pretty good of knowing what their fans like, so they've got a lot of popular picks in this movie, and although much of the returning cast didn't get much screen time, they absolutely nailed their personalities. I'd say they had good intentions and legitimately wanted to have a large-scale movie with a whole bunch of recognizable heroes fending off an alien invasion, but there were time and budget constraints, not to mention they had to make sure the movie didn't go on forever. Actually, one of the main reasons why this movie ended up being such a disappointment didn't have to do with the movie at all. It was the marketing and trailers that had everyone excited for all the returning characters that are showing off, only for none of them to get the chance to do much. Considering how hit or miss a number of the fights were, I think it would have been better if they'd moved some of the things from the final fight to more around the middle of the movie. For example, the ultra-powered heroes could have showed up earlier, maybe because Hero had sent them as soon as he got their cars to hold off the invasion while he was in the game world, cutting the connection between the two worlds, which would then let the Go Rider squad actually get a chance to shine in the final fight, and so on. In the movie's current state, I'd say all the returning characters are just neat little cameos that don't amount to anything, and maybe they'd be more appreciated if they weren't shown off in the marketing. I mean, at least they aren't rebooting any shows without finishing them, then pretending that the old shows never happened while reusing names and designs of old characters but with terrible new head designs and completely different characterizations that contradict everything their original characters were, while refusing to ever make a single design that harkens back to the old days and never making any homages to the old shows, instead opting to homage a completely different series, all while generally not having an understanding as to what fans would actually want, but that's a story for another day. Since Chou Superhero Taisen, I'd say Toei has been a lot better at handling old characters. We've had the Heisei Generations movies implement old Kamen Riders into the story in a natural fashion. There was that Super Sentai Strongest Battle miniseries that revisited the battle tournament idea, but actually made it work. And of course there's Kamen Rider Zeo, which made a point of bringing back as many old Kamen Rider actors as they possibly could. So I'm hoping that the new crossover movie ended up being pretty good. I think I might end up watching it since I did start watching Zenkaiger, mainly because my boy Daiboken was finally getting some love, but also because it turns out this show is really funny. I haven't watched Saber yet. Opinions on it seemed mixed, with some people saying it's great, others saying it sucks, plus there's the fact that reception to the Rider series before Saber, well, let's just say my favorite Kamen Rider isn't Korea's least favorite anymore. But they did say that they're going to put more effort into balancing the screen time of the two shows, so here's hoping that worked out. And hopefully they came up with more than one tune for serious moments this time.